Maple syrup. Hey, sorry about that. That was awful. That one chord. I totally put the finger in the wrong place. But you know that happens when you're rusty and you haven't played for 2 months because you're off designing games and stuff. It's funny. Somebody said today. I can't remember what they're talking about. They were talking about wards, WARD. Oh, instead of board game, or instead of game design awards, what if there were game design wards, like wards as to ward off game design from influencing you? And I said, at least then I could sleep. I'd be able to sleep if there was such a thing as game design wards. So, welcome everybody.
I just posted about that. I was like, I've been dreaming the last, I think, 2 to 3 nights of development. And I'll know it's development because I know that I'm quote unquote fixing the game, but I don't know what it is. And I don't know why I keep having this dream. Sorry.
Because it's now your life and your job. So there you go. Welcome to Maple Syrup. Welcome, Jen and Rebecca. It's great to see you here. Welcome another librarian. Daniel Rocky is tuning in from Toronto, Ontario, where he is a teacher librarian at the Thames Valley at Toronto District School Board. He is here. That's great. We have more librarians in the house. This is great. Jen and Rebecca, what's going on?
Hello.
Hi.
So I have a cricket that's in the background.
Yes.
It was accompanying the ukulele perfectly.
Yes.
Right on
Is this a cricket that you like keep on a string, or?
It's my little puppet for story time cricket. No, I don't know.
Do you have a puppet for story time?
It's a good luck cricket.
We often do have puppets for story time. You probably use some, right, Rebecca?
Oh yes,
puppets
we definitely
finger
have
play?
little. I mean, if you can think of a puppet, we probably have it. We have an entire room off to the side of our workroom, and there's a wall that's just puppets.
That's amazing.
It's excellent.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love puppets. I think they're such amazing things. I don't know if you know Sarah Graybell. Sarah Graybell can makes her own puppets, and she made puppets of our friends JF Gagne. Did you see those? Did you actually get to see those ever, Erica?
I don't know. For some reason that sounds familiar, but I feel like I should remember this.
So it was at Gen Con 2019. So the last Gen Con I think that we ever went to. Except the one that's happening right now. And JF had got her to make puppets of his entire family. So there was, there was a little JF and a little Elise. It's awesome. Because I know their family very well. So it's like, that is them in puppet form. This is amazing. So I think puppets are super cool. I actually played a puppet. I was a puppet.
There's so much to unpack there.
I know. In Three Penny Opera. So in Three Penny Opera, I was the narrator, but I was a puppet as a narrator. So I sat on my friend Julian's lap, and I was a ventriloquist dummy.
The dummy. Okay.
Yeah. So he would talk, and then I would sing the songs, and he would talk, and I would sing the songs. So it's kind of funny. And we just went off on a wild tangent there. But welcome, Jen and Rebecca, to the Maple Syrup Show.
Yes.
Yeah.
So later.
As we know on the Maple Syrup Show, we like to talk about your origin. So I'm going to ask Jen first. Jen, how did you get into library sciences? Because it is a science. And how did you get into games? And how did the two intertwine?
I didn't start out wanting to be a librarian, although I feel like many of us have similar experiences. Many librarians end up in librarianship as a second career or not our original path. I went to school for print journalism, and I have a history bachelor's degree too. And I was like, gonna light the world on fire with print journalism, but it was 2008.
So just as everything was starting to go into the web. Yeah.
Yep. And I had been working in a library next to where I lived and really liked it, and found out you get a master's degree in it. So what a lot of people don't know is that most librarians and most library directors, we have to have a master's degree. Most school librarians, academic librarians, specialty ones. I'm sure Rebecca has heard these too, where, we get jokes where, oh yeah, we're just reading books and sipping coffee all day long, or, oh, my wife can come in and volunteer and do what you're doing. But there's a lot behind it too.
Yeah.
So I graduated in 2011, not an even better time than 2018, 2008, still no better. But I'm now the head of reference and adult services at a suburban urban library in Connecticut. I'm in Yukon country, if that means anything to anyone.
It does.
So we got a lot of cows and pastures and farmland surrounding us, but the community I serve is 60,000 people. We're a former mill town, very New England. So I didn't start off as a gamer. I'm an only child, so I lived a sad only child life where I read my books. And played with dolls and did a lot of crafts, which that helps me now in my library job. But my husband, once we got together in 2004, my first like non-traditional game was Pirates of the Spanish Main. Is anyone? Oh,
really?
Do you remember
I was gonna
that?
say, that's kind of like randomly obscure.
That's kind of a big deal, really, or a little deal because they're really small.
Yeah.
But...
and really sad when they break when you put them together. And
because polystyrene just snaps, right? So and those dice were like completely like choking hazards. That's like it's choking hazard the game, but it's super actually really cool game.
Exactly.
It was, and I don't think we ever actually played the game. Like we just kept buying each other packs and going, "Oh, this is a rare one. Let's put it together." And then
that's kind of romantic, though. Huh?
It was like we should have known that we were screwed of sorts with collectible things because of that game.
Right? There you go.
But my first like traditional board game that we played together was Battle Cry. 2018. It was one of the first gifts my mom had gotten us for Christmas right after we got married that year.
It's a perfect game, actually.
I wonder where she made the choice from too. You're like, I always love to hear how people did their research.
So my husband was working on getting ready to work on his master's in military history.
I was just going to say, it sounds like a military history thing.
Yeah. And even behind me is the Civil War quilt that my husband's aunt had made for us. So we both are Civil War reenactors, and that's when my husband's master's is in Civil War history. So like I have such fondness for that game because I remember cozy winter, nights sitting together around the table, drinking tea, and before he like really got into his master's degree, and I stood a chance with military strategy, and then it was just slaughter.
Well, you see, here's where I'm going to place a fusillade of cannons because that's what happened at the Battle of,
Yeah.
Go away. Let me roll my dice.
Yeah. So, I mean, historical gaming has continued to be a mainstay in our house. But we played almost everything in our house, from easy breezy dice games up to we'll play 18xx and Steam stuff. So that's kind of how I am. And in gaming and library, well, I'll dribble my ball over to Rebecca. Oh, I'm dribbling the wrong way.
Dribble. Before we get to Rebecca, welcome to Brad Batchelor. Brad says, hello all. As a librarian and gamer myself, I am super excited for this. That's great. We do have a lot of friends of the show who are in library and information sciences, so it's wonderful. And we just cut off Rebecca's head. How did that happen?
I have no mouth.
You zoomed us in somehow.
I did. Oh, there we go. We need you to have a mouth because we need to ask you a question. If you ask a question, you didn't have a mouth, you can answer it. So, Rebecca, what about you? How did you get into library? How did you get into games? And how did the two come together? We're dribbling the ball down to you.
Yeah. So similar to Jen, my going into college, librarianship was not even a thought.
I don't know who actually has that thought,
really.
To be honest. Have you met anybody in your travels that actually wanted to be a librarian?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, okay.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think most people don't know what it entails. So it's like one of those, like, it's hard to pick because you're like, I don't know what that means.
Yes. But so when I went to, when I started my undergrad degree, I was a pre-med chemistry major. And then from there, I switched to a couple other things. I was in advertising for a little bit and photography, and eventually found myself in the digital media program over at Loyola. And they had just got a professor there, Dr. Florence Chi, who was all about game studies. And the timing for my life was just kind of perfect. And so I took her game studies class, and I did a lot of game studies research for my undergrad program. And I love how games can be used to build community. They can be used as tools for education, and they're fun. Like that's why we play them. And I was just thinking of ways that I could continue doing something with games where I was building community, providing education, and having fun. And I kind of landed on the idea of doing this with libraries. So I took a job at an associate level at a library in the Chicago suburbs. And I worked there for about a year before I decided, yes, libraries are the place for me. I love it here, and got my master's. And now I'm managing a board games collection and a video game collection, and I do a lot of games programming. And it just, a lot of things happened at the right time in my life to put me on the path where I'm at now. So
well, I'm glad those all happened, because I think, out of all the people that I interact with on, Twitter and Facebook, the two of you are two of the most passionate people that I know about gaming and libraries and things like that. So I'm really happy to have you on the show. I was looking for quotes today, because I always try to name the show something, witty or whatever. There's not a lot of idioms about libraries, but it's weird. I didn't know why. I don't know why
that makes sense to a degree. I guess it depends on how common vernacular things about libraries are.
I don't know, but there weren't a lot. But there was this one quote that I really liked, because it sort of embodied how I think about the two of you specifically when I think about libraries and games. And it said, bad libraries make collections, and good libraries, it's build collections. Good libraries build, programs, and then great libraries build community. And I think that for the two of you, that you both embody that great sentiment to me. Like whenever you're talking about libraries, it's not just about, I got this for the collection. It's like, and the community and the people. And that's to me what is remarkable about using things like games in a collection, sure, at a program, yes, but to build that community. As you know, as I've talked about libraries a lot with the two of you, that I love libraries. I think libraries are like the greatest places on earth. And to me, and I was reading this other quote, not today, a long time ago, about, libraries are one of the only places left in the Western Hemisphere where you are just allowed to exist, right? Where you can just be. There's no expectation of having money. You don't even have to have a fixed address. If you want to borrow stuff have a library card, sure, yeah. But sometimes you actually don't. And even just to read and to, use some of the facilities there and the stuff there, you don't have
computer access, all these things. Yeah.
I think so there's been studies out there where a lot of people, it's like a 1965 or 67 view of what a library is.
Do we still have that now?
A lot of folks do.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate, because I think so much of the work that Rebecca and I do really strives to break down those barriers and those stereotypes. The stereotype of the old Mary and the librarian, we hear that I hear that quite frequently, where we're but
how many times have you actually somebody?
I mean, so I'm a children's librarian. I don't.
You're different.
So yeah, and I'm referencing adult services, where folks come into a big room and do studying and computer access. So I'm more likely to do that, but I'll go over and politely ask them. I've legit yelled at someone, like screamed at someone. So I'm more likely to do that than shush someone.
Raise the volume.
Yeah. But people forget too, like a lot of libraries, you can get museum passes for local attractions. You can check out video games. There's Library of Things where, at least near me, one of our libraries has power tools. You can.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's tool libraries are a big growing thing right now.
Yeah, sewing machines, cake
Makers,
pans.
yeah, maker stations and stuff.
Yeah, and
Places.
plus the games and all of the traditional stuff that we. So it's so much more than that, and just as community centers, we will say sometimes that we're these third spaces too, and you
Mhm.
can't just exist and
Yeah.
be there
Yeah.
and hang out with us, and it's
It's
this
an
magical moment.
equalizer. You're right. It's one of the very few equalizers
Yeah.
because you're just going in to learn what you want to learn, right? And there's no other agenda. That's actually probably one of the big things too. Most places are very intentional on exactly what you need to do there. Whereas what's really cool about libraries in general is this is actually a place to be exposed to things, right?
Good point. Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. So, Rebecca, what's your philosophy towards gaming and libraries? Like, how do the two coexist? Why should they coexist? And how do we get them to coexist?
Well, for me, really all about the community. Libraries wouldn't exist without our communities. That's who we serve. And games are another piece of media that helps us do that. We've started with books, and we've got movies and music and all of those other forms of media. Games are just the next step with libraries. It's a great way to foster community. I mean, you can take a group of people who don't know each other and put a game on the table and teach them how to play, and they're all doing something together. Whether they're having a conversation or not, it's a great way to introduce groups of people. And the programming that I do at my library with games, I have a Pokemon club that I love. I love all of our Pokemon kids. It's such a great group, and we continued doing that even through the pandemic. We did Pokemon Club virtually so that these kids could
That's
still
awesome.
have socialization, and we run it from May of 2020 through this past month. We've been running it 3 times a month, and it's always packed with kids. Like, they love the socialization. They love getting to play all the funky little games that we put together that are featuring all of their favorite characters. It doesn't matter if you're playing, a mass-produced physical game, like any kind of game activity that you can get people interacting together is a good thing. And libraries are a great place for that. Like we said before, you don't have to have money to walk into the door of your library. And libraries are able to provide access to things that a lot of people wouldn't be able to access otherwise.
Yeah, great point.
Games a lot of them are not cheap. It's
that's quite the
expensive
cost
to build a home game collection. And so just like books and movies, a lot of people can use their library collections to augment their home collections, or completely be in place of a home collection if they can't afford to do that. And so access is a key thing, providing that access for your community, listening to their wants and their needs, and providing it to them. We also run a kids RPG club that we call Adventurers Club, which is the cutest. It's the cutest thing. I love it so much. We do a different RPG each month, and kids will come in with no gaming experience whatsoever, but they can sit down at a table and have, social interactions with their peers, and all the while they're building those socialization skills. They're working on reading, they're working on math, they're working on all of these skills. And the library, to me, is a great place for a hub to facilitate that kind of experience.
I agree. Do you agree, Jen?
No, opposition time. No, I'm just kidding.
So I have a couple of stories, I think, which highlight the why. Summer 2019, when the weather was nice, our downstairs programming room has open doors which open up out into a patio space, we're situated right in the middle of a park. So it can be very nice. And I'll often put games out there that don't have a lot of cards in case it gets breezy and stuff goes cattywampus. And
Cattywampus. Caddy. Is that like
Great
is
word.
that like a New England? Is that's got to be a New Englander phrase or something?
it's like
Cattywampus.
haywire of sorts.
Yeah, I get that. Cattywampus.
My husband will call it my fanciful language. Where's this fanciful language you're coming up with, Jen? And I was familiar with this gentleman, and I knew he was homeless. And he had asked about the game program, and a lot of people will ask about things and not show up, or maybe they'll show up the next time, or for whatever reason they can't come. And he came, and he sat down at a table, and to me it was another one of those magic moments.
Yes.
Where else can you go of sorts where someone at the table, you could have someone who is homeless, someone who's maybe middle class, and then someone who's more upper middle class, all at the table together, participating in an activity. Bless you.
Thank you.
And his compatriots didn't necessarily know that he was homeless, and they didn't treat him any differently. If they did, they didn't treat him any differently too.
Right.
So, they were kind of teaching him the rules, and it's just one of those things where when you don't even think about that, he could have the same experience that the rest of us could have and enjoy. So in the community that I work, it's very, very diverse economically, racially, religiously. And there's pockets where 42% of the population live below the poverty line.
Right.
That's huge. That's a lot of people. And to me, to be able to provide that same experience for a single mom working 2 full-time jobs with 3 kids to a 6-figure family, again, those are the things that you cannot measure. How can you not be overjoyed when those things happen? And again, like Rebecca says, it's all about that access. Because we're not charging for table space. We don't charge for snacks at my library. All of our food and refreshments is free, which again can be such a huge barrier for some folks if they go to an FLGS. They can't afford the table space or the snacks.
Right.
Or for my game programs, I tell people not to bring anything. Just bring yourself. Because I don't want someone to feel shame or upset when they see everyone else coming in with those big IKEA bags and they're coming in with nothing.
Right.
So to really, again, just level the playing field, you just come as you are, bring a bottle of water if you want, if you have it, and enjoy the experience like everyone else. And that's my philosophy, to be able to make it as accessible, inclusive as possible, to as many people as possible. I've run programs for families, adults, and seniors. The seniors are a hoot to work with. And the family programs are great too. You have to have different expectations of each group too.
Sure.
Yeah, I love our family programs because one of the great things about the library space, it is that third space. And so I had one family who came to one of our game night. It was an International Games Week event that we did a couple years ago. And they said the thing that they loved about being able to come to the library was it got them out of their home space. Like a lot of the time you're at home, you got a million projects going on. You kind of get stuck in your home headspace. Yeah. And it's nice to take everybody out of that and go into that third space where you don't have to clean up whatever is around you. You can just put a game on the table and play as you are, and you have fun with your family and not think about anything else that's going on around you. And that's what they loved about being able to access games in a library space, which was really beautiful to me. And I love watching families interact together when they're playing games. Like there's just so much joy and laughter and fun, which is really great to see.
Well, it's the perfect memories, right? And as you guys said, like there's so much to be built with all these different types of social interactions, but there's also that equalizer. Everyone just gets to be a person. So, you know, especially with your story, Jenn, about the homeless gentleman, imagine how often he's looked past, right? And nobody's going to look past him at the table because he's a player just like they are.
Yeah, his equal agency in the game, all that kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
So I know that both of you are, you know, obviously members of associations and stuff like that. So tell us about the gaming roundtable of the American Library Association, and what's your roles? How does this, you know, this group, how are they planning on changing the face of libraries around America? I know it's a big lofty goal, but are you doing that? How are you doing that? And how can some of our viewers who are librarians themselves, you know, are they able to tap into you as a resource, all that kind of stuff? What do you think?
So the
Yeah.
Games and Gaming Roundtable has been around quite a long time, and one of our origin folks is Scott Nicholson.
Yeah.
Good old Scott.
Right.
So, you know, we owe a lot to him. So as an official roundtable, I think it's 2012, Rebecca? 2000?
Yeah, because the International Game Day was 2011, and the roundtable officially started after that, if I have my history correct.
So we're a newer roundtable of the American Library Association, and you don't have to be a United States librarian to join the American Library Association. We do have international memberships that you can pay for. We have a pretty strong contingent of folks over in the UK, some folks in Canada too, and we're about 800 strong, Rebecca.
Mm-hmm.
And that's worldwide, I think. So some of our biggest initiatives are International Games Library Week. One of our claims to fame is that in 1 year, games were played on all 7 continents, which is super awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to be celebrating our big anniversary in a couple of next year.
Next year.
Yeah.
And it's become a really huge program for us too. We also have a gaming grant, which we offer to librarians who are looking to start or revitalize gaming programs or collections at their library. And then I think a lot of what we do is advocacy, not only with librarians, but industry folks as well. That's kind of a nutshell. And I'll bounce the right way this time over to Rebecca. But I'm one of the past presidents, and I'm a member of the board now.
Yeah, and I'm currently the president-elect of Game RT. And yeah, our current initiatives, like Jen said, we have the grant, which is excellent. International Games Week is fantastic. Any library can sign up to be part of International Games Week. And last year and this year, a big focus was virtual gameplay, because a lot of libraries are still having to do virtual programming with the pandemic going on and everything. So we've been providing resources so that libraries can figure out how they can run virtual gaming programs and still provide a fun, interactive experience for their community. And we've also started a professional development webinar series this year, which I've been super excited about. We had a webinar on games in academic libraries earlier this month. We did our first Twitch stream, which was really exciting. We taught people how to play Minecraft and use Minecraft for games programming. And we had, the first part of it was a little info session about Minecraft and programs you can run with it. But then the last half of it was just a handful of librarians playing Minecraft together, which was really excellent. I really enjoyed that. And every single month we have some sort of either webinar or a learn and play night where librarians and any library staff really who are running games programming or collections can come and hang out with us and chat about games and how they can use them in their libraries and learn about specific games that we're featuring during those events, which is really great. We had Eric Slauson a couple months ago taught a bunch of librarians how to play Monstrosity. And then
Yay.
I ran Monstrosity for my gaming program at the library after that. And being able to take something from a professional development like that and then immediately implement it in your library is excellent.
Yes.
And it was really great having, the game designer talk about the game and how you can play it in a variety of formats and be able to implement that. And, our patrons loved it. And some of them went out and bought the game after that because it was so much fun. Benefit of having games in libraries.
Right?
No, it's a huge one. It's the ability to shop because, as we said, these are very, very expensive. So, not just counting people who can't afford it at all, for the family that only can maybe purchase a few games a year, that's an important decision. And so you almost, you want that test drive possibility, right?
Yeah. Try before you buy is a big thing that libraries do with all media, anything that they carry, their tech spaces, all of that is a great try before you buy experience.
Yeah. 100%.
And as for ways for any library folks listening right now, ways that you can get involved, we would love for you to be, a full-on member of GameRT. To do that, you have to be a member of ALA first and then add GameRT membership to your ALA membership. But we understand that is prohibitive for a lot of folks. It is not a cheap membership, but there are ways you can get involved with GameRT without being a full member. We are looking for people to submit game reviews for our blog. So if you've game reviews for just games you like in general, or why a specific game works great for library programs and settings. If you went to a conference or a convention and you've got highlights that you want to share, you can blog about that and talk about maybe you went to a library panel or saw something that you can tie back to libraries. If you've run programs and you want to share a program report, what worked, what didn't, and share all those tips and feedback with people. And then if you have, collection development tips and tricks that you want to share, how you got your collection going, how you convinced your leadership to let you do it, anything like that, we're looking for blog submissions for those things. We are also going to be starting a new blog spotlight where we're going to spotlight gaming librarians and do like little bios. Gaming librarianship, while it's been around for a few years in the world of libraries, it's still relatively new. And a lot of people, when you talk about being a gaming librarian, don't really think that's a real thing. So being able for us to shine a light on that and share, these are really cool things that librarians are doing with games in their spaces all over the world, not just in the US. Those are the kind of things that we want to spotlight on the blog too. And then anybody can, you can apply for the grant that we have. And then with our learn and play sessions, if someone has a proposal for a learn and play session that they think would be really great for us to run, a game that you think works really well in library spaces and you think you'd be a great teacher for it, we're accepting proposals for 2022 on submissions for those events and our webinar series as well. So there's a lot of ways to get involved without being a member, and those are just a few of them. So
very, very cool. I just want to ask you a quick question because you kind of mentioned it, or maybe I don't know if Erica kind of landed on this as well. Is there a game that you think this is a perfect game for a library? Because we have a lot of designers out there. What would be a library?
Yeah, what makes a good library game? That's actually an excellent question.
I think it really depends on the kind of program you're going to be running. So, like, I run 3 very different kinds of games-related programming at my library. So, our family game night, we like to pick one game that we can kind of feature for the evening that will allow us to have kind of an unlimited number of players. So, roll and writes and party games have worked really well for that because if we have a group of people who kind of want to play together, we want to be able to do that. And if we're teaching, we're featuring a single game, even if folks can pull other stuff off the shelf, we want everybody to be able to play if they'd like. So games like that work really well if you're trying to focus on group games. But then I also have my kids' RPG club, and we focus on a different role-playing game that kids can play and would like to play each month. So having games that are, or at least RPG scenarios that are shorter, where we could take 5 kids through, whether we're giving them, a pre-gen character or letting them make their character and get through some rules explanation and have a really cool adventure in an hour and a half would be excellent. And then the Pokemon program, we kind of just make up our own little party games for that and make
it sounds so awesome.
Themes.
Do you share those party games that you've made up with other people?
We do. We actually did a webinar on Pokemon programming for libraries that is, I believe, now publicly available on the GameRT website.
Very cool.
And there's stuff shared there, but anybody who contacts me, I will share. Librarians love to share.
Yes.
Well, I don't want to speak for 100%, but
No,
like 95% of librarians love
I'm
to
going to
share.
say you're cool with that.
So my class fell down like an awesome rabbit hole this last, the end of this last year. And one of the things they really got into was like the idea of like choose your own adventures, or sort of like small, kind of like at home style escape rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And so we fell into this whole rabbit hole of library created escape rooms done through Google Forms.
Yeah.
Yes.
We did one.
I think we found 3 or 4 of them. And it was really funny because I think every one of them was done by a library.
Yeah, there is a spreadsheet floating around, a Google Doc sheet floating around out there that is literally dozens and dozens and dozens of Google Forms escape rooms created by library folks.
And they're cute and fun. They're usually literary connected or focused.
Yeah.
Like I think we did a Harry Potter one. I want to say we did a Alice in Wonderland one. So then it also reinforces other kinds of knowledge, which was kind of cute. Like, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
That was a big thing that came out of that pandemic pivot, when we had to figure out something where we could still offer, interactive programming, and those escape rooms on Google Forms became a really big thing.
Yeah, because I mean, Google Forms are widely available to like anybody who can access a computer.
Yeah,
which is another thing. So it's not using proprietary software. You don't need any
little
of
hyperlinking. You're good to go.
Yeah, you don't need the Breakout EDU kit, because we made tons for Breakout EDU kits, but you need the kit then, right, and the physicalness of it. But having just the Google Forms and maybe going to do a little research or whatever, or go, find out, characters' names and stuff in books. You're making people do research. I like that. As an academic, I am very, very happy that that's happening. Oh, look, we have a question from Brad. Brad Batchelor asks, have you run into any barriers teaching board games and or RPGs? Do you even teach them, or do you let the patrons instruct each other?
So the program that I run for adults, we started off where I was teaching. The way I run my program for adults is it's almost like a little mini convention, and we pick back, and when we first started, we picked 4 games, and I had like a team of volunteers plus myself, and they would pick the game and they would teach the game. So that kind of answers part of your question, that part of my patrons do teach other patrons. But it became too much for me, because I found my role in that event to really be the host, and to be really there as support for my teachers and any questions or problems people had, and really as new folks and folks were coming in, to welcome them into the space. Sometimes even just the little things like that, where, when you come into a room and you could tell folks are new and they're kind of looking around and they're not sure where they want to sit down. Just kind of saying, hey, I'm Jen, I'm the program runner here. What kind of games do you like to play? I can help you find a good table. That'll be a good spot for you. I also kind of stopped teaching games because I'm not fantastic at it. And I had an incident with a guy who, this was back when my husband used to come and teach too. And my husband was teaching a game. He was busy teaching a different game. So he's teaching two at the same time. And he asked Matt a question. I stepped in, answered the question. He looks over my shoulder to my husband and is like, "Oh, was that the right answer?"
Oh,
Which does not fly with me.
no.
So I don't teach anymore. And part of it too is I think you have to know if you are a strong teacher too, because when you're teaching with the public too, you're getting all different kinds of skill levels. So at one adult program, I had legit two grandmas come in and it was great and it was awesome. But they hadn't played a modern hobby game. So it was like finding the right match for them. And we can go all the way up to my 18XX folks. So huge skill set. So for me, I also have a huge variety of games that we play, anywhere from Happy Salmon up to Lisboa.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that people are comfortable. And all my teachers too are not all of them are Lisboa and not all of them are Happy Salmon. So it's kind of catering to what they want.
That's right. The right teacher for the right group, for sure.
100%. And I have one friend, he teaches my heavy games. I have one friend, Jason Perez, who comes and teaches all of my cooperative games generally.
Yeah.
So, and I think when people are more passionate about that particular genre, they're more likely to want to teach it too.
Yeah. And they probably do a better job.
Feel proficiency.
And they enjoy it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brad, for that question. That's awesome. Another question as we cut off Rebecca's face again. Sorry, Rebecca. You mentioned before that a lot of your roles involve, or not a lot, but some of your role involves like liaisoning between publishers and the library. And you mentioned librarian-friendly purchasing programs, Jen. What are those? And how do we access, not we, but other librarians, how would they access these programs?
So this came out of a specific problem. Well, specific problems in both industries. On the librarian end, for many years, for whatever reason, librarians were going to publishers and asking for donations. And in the ye old days, and by that I mean 2015, like when I started. I'm old.
So 6 years ago.
6 years ago. Publishers could donate a lot more. There were a lot fewer gaming programs worldwide that were at libraries. There were a lot fewer gaming librarians, and it was more of a novelty kind of thing, and they could do that. But as the hobby has grown and as gaming librarianship and gaming in libraries has grown, so has the number of us too. So that's also kind of compounded by what's going on in the gaming industry.
Sure.
With shipping crisis and manufacturing crisis and not enough product. So I think these two things have really converged at the same time. And it's interesting too, because I don't know how we ended up, I can hypothesize, but traditionally a lot of public libraries have budgets. And they have budgets for books, for audiobooks, DVDs, whatever. So I think that's of sorts how we ended up asking for donations, because we didn't have a line item budget for games. Right. Maybe we had to prove to our directors we could do this and it'd be great. And then we'd get a line item in our budget. But as this grows on our end, we need to be kind of evangelizing to our supervisors and our superiors that this is worthwhile stuff. We need to have money in our budgets to do this, and that it's something that the library should fund, just like they fund DVDs and music and all of our other stuff. So that became pretty clear to me. And last year I worked with T from HABA, and that was kind of the first program that I had helped kind of set up. T is great if people haven't worked with them before, and we created a it's a library support program where librarians can come in. We fill out a form. We have to be verified because unfortunately I heard a couple of stories where lay people were going in and pretending to be librarians and asking for donations.
Sure.
And publishers were sending stuff, super generous. But that happened and some folks got really upset by that, rightly so. So we have to provide a work ID, letterhead, our tax exempt stuff that we get. And then once we're in and verified, we can go into a publisher's website if they would like and get a discount of some sort, whatever the publisher decides on. And we can purchase games directly from them. Right.
Okay.
So that's one of the options that I've been working on. I did that with Haba, with Stonemeyer, 25th Century. There's a couple others too. I've had more recent conversations. But you know, a lot of folks, you know, if they have their NFLGS, sometimes I really encourage them to make a connection with them because then you're just giving back to the local economy too. Really great business connections and community
Maybe they'll
building
come help
there.
Teach, right?
They do at my library, and they come and sell games there too. My ultimate goal is that there'll be a larger distribution company rather than Peach State Hobby out of Georgia, where we can go in as vendors and get the same discount that an FLGS would get or whoever would get. Peach State is great. We can go in as vendors, but their offering isn't as big as some of the larger distribution places. Sure. So that's kind of what the ultimate goal is, for us to be kind of welcomed at that table where we can be purchasing games and contributing that it's equal.
Yeah, that it's not like hat in hand, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, for those people out there listening, if you're a publisher, if you're a designer, if you're in distribution, manufacturing, whatever, how can we help librarians? What would you say, Jen and Rebecca? What can we do for you? Like, if you know that I know lots of people, that Erica knows tons of people, how can we help you? How can we help librarians make this mission that we all believe in, that games are for everybody? How can we help you? What do you think?
I think beyond making the purchasing of games easier for libraries as nonprofit organizations, having aids for your games that are for libraries, because as we talked about earlier, teaching games can be difficult. And just because you are a librarian with a huge passion for games, that does not mean you are going to be a great games teacher. So having really great resources that you can share with your patrons who come into your programs, player aids, things like that, that you can hand out, including, you know, even if you have like a QR code or something that goes to a how to play video, having things like that that are easily packageable for us that we can just not have to put together ourselves. Like a lot of librarians end up being really poor graphic designers and things like that because we have to
put a lot of game designers, to be honest.
But we have to put all that stuff together for our programs. We have to make all those handouts. And so if there's something that just exists for your game that tells people, you know, here's a player aid, a quick start guide on how to start playing. And if you want more in depth, here's a QR code so you can go watch a how to play video, something that we can just print out and provide it during our program would be super, super excellent.
Do you have any examples that people can go look at that maybe that you didn't create, but that maybe are great from already from
like what you're looking for?
Yeah, from a company that was done by a non-makeshift graphic designer. Do you know of any?
I do not have an example of one.
Do you have examples of what you might have made? Because if you send me one of those, then I can post it on the Shop Talk page and we can talk about it. We can say, hey, this is what librarians need. And the funny thing about what you're saying is that, you know who else could use those? Friendly local game stores, conventions.
That would be a great way to teach games in general.
Yeah.
For sure.
game cafes, right? All of these places could use this thing. And I've said this since the beginning of my, tenure or whatever you want to call it in the game industry, that the barrier to entry for most people, isn't passion. It's can I learn this game?
Right.
Can I learn how to play this game?
Somebody
right?
teach me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so, is there a better way to do that? And obviously, as an academic, I think there is a better way to teach things. We just got to produce the parts and the pieces, and how much effort is that? But if you can show me something that you've made in the past that you think, hey, this has the components, we can talk to everybody out there about, hey, this is a thing that the public has said would help them play your games more, teach your games to other people, and that would hopefully lead to more people playing games, buying games, especially in a market that is actually much broader than a friendly local game store, right? There are people who go to the library who would never ever set foot inside a convention, let alone a friendly local game store, let alone,
it doesn't feel like
whatever.
their type of space, right? Like, because we really do have these carved out, defined spaces of often who is the person that gets to go there, right? And so as we were like kind of from the beginning of our conversation, libraries are one of the few like anybody can go places, not this person is expected to go type place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it'd be great. I do a lot of children's programming, and a lot of people, you look at a children's game, and people who are experienced gamers will look at those rules and be like, "Oh, that's simple. I can just look at that and just sit down and start playing."
Yeah.
But I need a quick start guide for, this father and son who just walked in the door to pick up their books, and they heard our overhead announcement that says, "Hey, there's a family game night starting in 5 minutes." And they're like,
hey, we got an hour.
That might be cool. So they stop in. They've literally never played a hobby game. And even something that's, to an experienced hobby gamer would be simple. Having a quick start rule sheet or player aid would be really helpful for them, so that they don't have to read through an entire rule book. They don't know what a meeple is. They don't know what drafting is.
Right.
They don't know all of that lingo. And so having something quick start for that whole spectrum of knowledge would be really
they don't have the background knowledge to interpret the rules easily and quickly. And this is something like, you're preaching to the choir here specifically, but I preach this out to everybody. I don't actually make rules for games that I design at first at all. I make player aids because they are so much more useful on a functional level. It's like, who's going to pick up this big book of stuff when if I could give them a card or two that would tell them everything you need to know about how to play this game in one card on both sides. Let's do that instead. So I think that's a great idea. So I'll be poking you later to see if you can provide us with anything that we can show other people.
Sure.
Like, this is what it would be. So even if you don't have one, make one.
I can make a template.
Just like a template of, here's what I would want, like, keywords, QR code for a video, a step-by-step, and how to score at the end and who wins, or however you want it. And I think if we have a template, people are so much more readily able to fill that in than to design a whole thing themselves.
Something you can follow, right? Like, this more and more like often how we teach each other how to do most of the stuff in gaming, in all honesty, is like, oh, that's a really good way of doing it. Maybe we should all start doing that.
Some of my most popular downloads are my Mad Libs. Like, they're just like Mad Lib on how to do like a bio for yourself, an author bio, a game designer bio is very similar, or like a Mad Lib for your elevator pitch. And those get tons and tons of downloads just because people don't know how to do it. And they say, okay, if I can fill in just the blanks with my own stuff, that's great. That's a start. And I always tell them, this is just a template. You're going to have to massage it. You're going to have to read it out loud to human beings, and they're going to have to give you feedback because it will sound really stilted, but that's the format. That's the prototype.
Somewhere to start. That's the thing. It's like, have no guidelines or have some guidelines. Like, it's like people are like, I'll take the sum.
Yeah. Speaking of that, what are some guidelines that you can suggest? This is that really small question that we had before. That's really long, but it's small font. What can library patrons do? Because there's probably more library patrons that are going to watch this than librarians, to be honest. I mean, we know that not everybody can be a librarian, because then not everybody can be as awesome as a librarian. Let's just put it that way. It is true. What can library patrons do if they'd like to see their local libraries circulate board games or run a program? What do you think?
This is a question that I'm super passionate about.
I know, because you wrote this.
Yes. So librarians can talk all day to their supervisors and their bosses and their coworkers about how great it would be to have games and run programs and try to do community building. But without support from the community, a lot of that can't happen. Part of the proposal process, we have to show that a collection or a program is going to be sustainable with community support, with our budget. All of that factors in. So if the community wants something, they need to be vocal about it, and then they need to actually show up.
Right.
A lot of the time, a lot of the problem that some libraries have is that a community will be vocal about something that they would like the library to do, but then when the library tries to do it, the community support falls through. And there's a lot of reasons why that happens. But being active with your library and being vocal about things that work for you. You know, if your library has a program that you're interested in, but you know there's a community of people who would love to attend, but the scheduling just doesn't work for whatever reason, let them know. Scheduling is one of our biggest issues because,
for sure,
you know, sometimes you're just kind of throwing a dart at a calendar. Like, I think this might be a good time for this based on other programs we've done. You know, this is the time when school gets out, so maybe it's easier for them to come over at, you know, right now.
There was a rain shower that might happen that day. It's the third Thursday of the month. You go, wow.
Yeah. But the biggest thing is letting your library know what you would like and then actually using it.
Like supporting what you asked for.
Yeah. I actually had a patron come in the day that we launched our board game collection, and it was such a good interaction. Like, he came in and saw the collection. He's like, yeah, you know, I saw all kinds of talk about this on social media, that the library now has this collection. I had to come in and see it for myself. And he asked me, like, what do you need from me so that you can get more budget? Like, how can we make this collection bigger? What can I do that is going to support this so that I can keep checking games out and get more people in here? And then he did all of that. Like, he had people, you know, he asked people to write in with their support or request specific games. You can, a lot of libraries have some way that their patrons can do like a materials request if they're looking for a specific book, game, movie, whatever it is that the library doesn't have. And you can request stuff like that to see if your library will get it. And doing those kinds of things, making those requests, and not just saying it to a library staff person, like in passing, but actually filling out the form, sending an email, putting something in writing so we have that like tangible proof that there is this need, this desire from the community for this thing to happen, is so, so helpful.
I'd say when I've helped patrons who are interested is for them to go in with a specific plan.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do an event, know what age group you want to work with. Know if you want to do an evening or a weekend or after school, how long you want the program to be, how much staff time is going to be involved with this. Because, I mean, Rebecca and I are very well versed in this. We're you're equal partners in this, but if you get a librarian who is enthusiastic but isn't a gamer themselves, they may feel a little lost and not as knowledgeable, whatever. So, you know, are you going to be running this program and all you want from the library is the space and maybe some snacks? You know, what kind of games would you offer? You know, those kinds of things. And really having it like a proposal. And to me too, it's finding the right librarian. I've had some folks say, I've tried before. I said, but who were you talking to?
Yeah.
Were you talking to someone at the circulation desk, or were you talking to the children's librarian who does gaming? Or were you talking to the adult programming person, or were you talking to the person who's in charge of the teen collection development? Those, you can get wildly different answers if you are not talking to the right person.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes persistence, just being super persistent and asking, emailing the director, and really showing up too. I'm all about groupies. I love groupies. Tell your friends, tell your family, and continue to check the stuff out, continue coming to the programs like Rebecca said. And just keep on loving what we're doing and being vocal about it too.
Yeah, staff time and knowledge base is a big thing, and those two things combined, or lack of those two things combined, is a big reason why a lot of things don't happen in libraries. But if there is a want or a need in the community, and a community member can step up and say, even though the library staff may not have someone with the knowledge base to make this happen, if you're willing to volunteer and put in the time, to do a program or to chat with someone at the library about why the thing you're asking for is going to benefit the community, that can go a long way. And I know a lot of smaller libraries or rural libraries, funding is a huge thing, which is why, a lot of libraries ask for donations, because funding is a huge issue everywhere. But finding ways to bring all of that together is key.
Yep.
Very, very cool. Here's the next question. Can you tell us why libraries are great partners for publishers, designers, and friendly local game stores?
Do you remember earlier when I said people come to our programs and play the games and then they like them so much they want to buy them?
Yeah.
That's exactly what happens. Like, you like a movie, you buy it. You like a book, especially if you're a rereader, you buy it. You like a game, you probably gonna also buy it.
Right. I would be more likely to buy a game than a book, because I'm not a rereader. I'm a replayer, though, for sure. Right.
I specifically put this question because I had an interaction with a publisher, a mid-level publisher, who was very dismissive of this idea of gaming in libraries. There's no return on investment.
Isn't that grassrootsing it so the person will actually go buy your product?
So to me, that's very short-sighted. I understand that you do have to be selling your games and your product, but let's say we purchased your game from you. So there, you've had a sale already. Yeah. We circulated 5 times, and one of those 5 people purchases it. That's not terrible. That's not a terrible thing.
20% return is higher than almost anybody can get in a normal market. So
it really is the bigger picture too. And I've heard from, I really encourage librarians to work with their FLGSs too, but I've heard horror stories from folks about FLGSs, and that it's a competition and we're taking business away from them.
Oh my gosh, these people have a very strange mentality.
And I agree. It's meant to be a partnership, that we're there to augment what you are doing already, and you are there to augment what we are doing too.
By that same logic, open gaming tables at a convention are stealing business from them. Right. That's like the dumbest thing I think I've ever heard, when you actually continue the thought process out. How many other places are there open spaces where people bring their own games? Guess what? Think of any club at any school, university, like, not even going into people who just show up for games. Like, yep. I just this is probably the dumbest line of logic I think I've ever heard.
But I've heard it so often, and it's kind of a very old school mentality.
You create a customer, let alone a potential repeat customer, if it's a good experience.
And to me, so when someone comes in and says, I borrowed Cat Lady from your library, and I'll say, okay, well, the Portal, which is the game store that I work with, I said, they're right up the street. Maybe if you say to them, I borrowed it from the Manchester Public Library, they'll give you a discount.
Yeah, that'd be a great incentive program. It's like, if you play the game, we give you a ticket of some kind that if you show up at the local game store, they'll give you 10% off.
Yeah, so when my FLGS comes to my programs, they sell games, and they usually sell them at discount too. Because again, it's all about I'd rather them sell them at discount than someone go on their phone and say, oh, I'm going to get it from Amazon later when I get home. I want them to support their FLGSs.
Yeah, you want to build a customer base. You want to build a relationship and a community within the community as opposed to...
Hence the local part.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
And then for publishers and designers too, I've hosted a lot of all those folks. And again, it's just the community building. I've really encouraged a lot of designers lately to reach out to their library. Do you have a local game design group? You know, get a plan together, like I said, and say, hey, I'd worked with Tim Eisner recently, and I said, hey, I'm sure you have a bunch of folks out in Portland who would love to go to the library, and it's new exposure, it's new eyeballs. I'm always saying this, that we're building a new herd of gamers. Yeah. It's a completely, and revitalizing too. So,
do you know how hard it is to target a new market? And you're basically offering to do it for free.
We are.
Like, again, this is like turning this down is got to be one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
It's so strange. It's so strange. Like,
there's so many reasons I could be like off the top of my head why this would already be better use of your money than a lot of other things.
It's sort of the, you know, instant recuperation versus long-term. Yeah, it's short-term gain versus long-term gain in a lot of good ways. Like Erica and I, you know, up in Canada, we definitely have a more difficult time getting publishers to come up for conventions in Canada because they don't see it as, oh, am I going to sell anything? And, you know, the trip has to recoup itself immediately. And how do I get my product up there? And I said, well, we can work on that. But also, how about you write it off on a marketing budget line instead of a sales budget line? Because you're basically trying to tap into an uncharted territory. You know, you think Canada is the same as America. It's not. It's a different country, you know, on a map. But also, you know, your name might not be as big here. So why don't you try to make it bigger? Why don't you market to an audience that hasn't seen you yet, right? Yeah. So lots of stuff. I knew this was going to happen because I know how much the two of you can talk. It is 10:07. And they, by the way, for those of you who are saying, Sen, that's rude. They told me this. They told me they would talk a lot. This is not me being judgmental. So, you know, we're going to have to close up shop, unfortunately. But it was lovely to have you. And you know what? Let's schedule something for the 10th anniversary of the game RT. So next year at some time, let's have the librarians on again. And so we can ask them what's changed in a year, because hopefully we won't be still under severe lockdown conditions. I mean, like, fingers crossed, knock on wood, all that stuff. Get vaxxed. That'll help. Thank you very much to people who have. Because we want to get back to public play. We want people back in the libraries playing games, reading books, you know, doing programs, all that kind of stuff. We want the community back. So let's tell people where we can reach each other. If you want to reach Rebecca is at To Play As Human, right?
Everywhere on the internet, almost. I'm To Play As Human.
There you go. And the website is www.toplayashuman.com. What can people find there? I went there today because I've never actually seen your website. So what can people find there?
So on my website, people can find both gaming resources, and I'm a children's librarian, and I share a lot of my storytime resources. So I have game menus there. Like, I've got one that's like, I have my local game group. I have all of our themed game menus that we do. One that's like travel size, stuff for 2 players, stuff that's quick to teach and easy to learn, little listicles like that. I also shared a lot of stuff from when I was going through library school. So any of you library school folks, if you're looking for like webinars that you need to take and articles on building game collections, I've got a lot of that there. And then my storytime stuff on my books page, I share a lot of my storytime planning resources. So you can look and see like entire storytimes that I've planned with books and songs and music and down to the puppets that I use.
Because you'd think it'd be so easy, but it's not.
It came back to puppets.
Yeah. We did.
Oh, yes.
Full circle.
Full circle. Oh, I'm so happy. Puppets.
Those puppets are the best.
Yeah. I mean, librarians, teachers, anybody who's working with kids, ECE. I mean, that's a wonderful resource because it does take a lot more than people give, I think, educators and librarians credit for.
Whenever I was primary, I always had puppets.
Yeah.
Yeah. puppets are great.
And having access to a ready-made kind of not
Plans of
recipe,
any
but
kind.
hey,
Oh, honestly, plans of any kind to help you direct towards, like, you know, what might be a good lesson.
Look at that! I didn't press that, and it worked.
Yay!
That's the first time it came up. I wonder what
Yeah.
word triggered it.
Awesome.
The thanks,
Maybe?
thanks,
Thanks?
awesome. Something like
I don't know, but Brad, that's great. Thank you very much for your thanks, and thanks for being the very first bot-activated comment. On the Meeple Syrup.
We don't know how or why it works, but you
but it did. So there you go. Good for you. Awesome. And let's see, Jen, you are available by email at theboardgamelibrarian@gmail.com. And you can find Jen on Twitter and stuff too. It's like BG_librarian, I think, right?
Yeah, if you do, my biggest thing that I maintain the most is Instagram with the Board Game Librarian, but I'm on Facebook and Twitter. My website's like not great. I have one blog post on there.
But I'm going to put it up anyway.
Oh, so sad. Really sad. But and a lot of folks know me from the Dice Tower too, where I've been on Board Game Breakfast for a long time doing so this is part of my evangelism. It's my sneaky evangelism, where I've been pairing books and board games together for, oh God, it'll be 4 years in January.
That's a wonderful thing too, right? Because there are definitely books that are related to board games. Obviously, like, you know, certain books are made into board games.
Genres are so
but I think that's even better is when it's like this is sort of related, and you'll like it because you like this.
Yeah,
I think that's so cool.
And that's like what we in our realm call readers advisory, but we're doing that's like a readers advisory and a gaming advisory. I'm doing right there.
Advisory.
Yeah. So that's my sneaky way that I figure if you like me and you like the segment, that you'll go back to your library, see if we have board games, and if we don't, you'll ask. I'm all about those positive associations.
There you go. Brad says that awesome with 2 exclamation points is what triggered the bot.
That did it.
Maybe, yeah. All right, excellent. Everybody out there, you know where to find me if I stop coughing. At Senfeng Lim on Twitter is a great place to reach me. Erica, where are you?
At Erica Boogers.
Wherever. Wherever. And Jess is at TT Void. If you can find them, that's where they may be. They're slightly more active.
Sneaky. Yeah, actually, you know what? It's nice to see Jess interacting at all on platforms.
It's true. And obviously at Meeple Syrup. The best place to find all of us, and Jess as well. We hang out a lot on Meeple Syrup Shop Talk. The place on Facebook. It's just a forum on Facebook. If you like what you see today and you like us, try to join up there, and you'll probably be let in. You know, it is just a curated thing.
Answer the questions legitimately, please.
Yeah, because if you don't, I will seriously post your stuff. Yeah. But look at who posted this. And if you want to support us, you can reach out to us at patreon.com/meeplesyrup, where the money there helps us keep the lights on and apparently pay the bots to do bot things.
Whatever it is
it's doing. I told you, Jen and Rebecca, at the beginning that I'd ask you for final advice. So what is your piece of final advice to the audience? Whatever the audience you think it may be, if they're librarians, game designers, gamers, whatever. What is your piece of final advice? We'll start with Rebecca.
My advice is just, and this kind of goes for everything, but do what you love. Like, if something makes you happy, pursue that. And if that thing is games in libraries, then that's awesome.
There you go. And Jen, what's your piece of final advice?
I would say just support your local library. Go there. Take your kids there. Go to one of Rebecca's.
Bring
story
your kids
times.
to my story time.
Come to our programs. Your tax dollars fund us. You've already paid for it, and
you paid for the admission.
You did, and it's such a small portion of your tax dollars too that you might as well. Even if you're not a reader, we have so much other stuff too.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't know that you can just. Go get your family movie night going or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be like the poster child for libraries. I am awesome, obviously, and I grew up in libraries. So if you want to be like me, go to
If you
library.
want to be like Zen, go to
I'm just
library.
kidding about that, but not really. My dad is 80 years old, and he goes to a library every day of his life. Every day of his
I
life,
love
he's
that.
been in a library after retirement. He goes, he reads the newspaper, he logs on, he sells his stocks on the computers that are at the library. He makes photocopies of his bank statements. He goes home, and he actually might come back later that same day. And the funny
Like
thing
his
is, so
office. I love it.
yeah, it's really funny. In our library system, you only get like, an hour, 2 hours or something of internet time per day per patron. So my dad will use my mom's internet time. That's how much my family loves libraries. It's true. And maybe it's because we're thrifty. Erica knows all about how thrifty my family is. So we are a thrifty family. We love libraries, but you don't have to be thrifty to love libraries. You should just go because they're fun, they're cool, and you get exposed, like Erica said, to new things all the time at libraries, things that you would never think of if you just,
You wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah.
Like you just would not have seen it.
would not have
If you
seen it.
haven't been to your library like in the past year, past 5 years,
Those
go
people who
and
probably
see
like the
what's
past
new.
10
Like
to 20
Yeah,
years in all
please
honesty.
do.
They should be
the,
going.
the library that I work at, we have a tech buffet where you can make your own books. You can 3D print. You can make buttons and use a Cricut silhouette cutter. We have a green screen room where you can make movies. We have a
Yeah,
sound recording
where you can do your
studio. We
podcast.
have, people record podcasts in our studio. You can do so much at the library. We're more than books. Books are
Mhm.
great, but we're more than books.
It's
We
like
have a little
like,
cafe area. It's great.
It's
like
awesome.
a nearly full service little center of like
Yeah.
all kinds of things.
I think if I went back for another degree, I think I would do library studies. I think I really would. I love libraries like immensely. It's like my heart is in there. I can't. I really can't.
You've got enough jobs already.
Enough jobs.
Until
All
you
right.
retire, go get the degree.
Speaking of my job, next week we're going to have Brian McDonald on. Brian is a developmental psychologist. He's going to come and talk about his area of expertise, which is developmental psychology, which is also my area of expertise. And we're going to talk about how to use that when designing games, specifically mostly for kids. And
Yes.
this is this is a thing that we're starting to try to figure out how to do more, is bring people in who love games but are adjacent to game design or the game design industry. They're not publishers, they're not designers, they're not,
But the knowledge is just as
yes,
valid.
to the culture, the community, and to the design of games, right? So that's kind of our goal for this year, as well as still uplifting voices and searching out new areas of gaming. I think, Erica, we still need to get into that, the Korean market and talk about that.
I keep asking.
I keep trying.
But no, the hard time is like, okay, we obviously have some issues with time zones
because we're live, right?
That.
So
and yeah, so I'm gonna put a plug out on Twitter at some point soon. I didn't realize how many people in particular until okay, this is totally random aside, but it's somewhat related.
It is and it's not.
So I put out a Twitter post the other day because I need a new Pokemon friend for like a quest, right?
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
And then I was like, okay, but then I got like 15 new ones from Japan specifically. So then I was like, oh, I didn't realize that many people in Japan are paying attention to what I'm doing. But yeah, like I love all 104 of you lovely friends I have on Pokemon. You're all amazing. I love you all. But I think we can see if we can strategically put a shout out to say like who is interested in talking to us. You know, that's how we like you got KC and things like that. It's like we want to know about these other markets.
Exactly, because it's not that I don't want to talk to Eric Price and Japan Anime Games and whatnot, but I'd rather talk to like
North American version.
Yeah, I'd rather talk to a Japanese game designer, maker, publisher, etc., Korean, Taiwanese, Chinese, etc. Have them come on the show.
What that space is like. Right?
Yeah, and
like,
I mean, obviously there might be some language issues and some time issues, but we'll do what we can because we really want to expose everybody to all sorts of gaming from all sorts of places.
And they're often different types of games, which is even cooler. Like it's such a mentality shift on even the topic of some of these games. Like it's just there's so much to learn.
There is. All right. On that note, thank you so much, Jen. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for coming. It's been a long time coming. We've been meaning to have you on the show for a while, so thank you so much for being number 2 show, the second episode in the second half of 2021. And like I said, we'll have you back in for the 10th anniversary of Game RT. So on that note, we'll see everybody next week on Meeple Syrup. We'll have Dr. Brian McDonald coming in to talk about developmental psychology and its impact on game design. See y'all later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.